Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them, and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Mel, it's been 8,332 days since we have seen each other.
In person.
Uh-huh. But we've seen each other on Zoom like once or twice a week. So, hi.
Hi. Yeah, and we text sometimes too.
Yeah. Are you ready for the week?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm going to skate and ski and do school and teach piano. But can I tell you something amazing that happened yesterday?
Please.
I mean, it didn't happen yesterday, but I discovered it yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, tell me.
It actually happened way back in the olden days of yore. I mean, like way, way, way olden days, like 1692. I found out that not only did I have a relative, a something something 8 millionth great grandmother that was accused of being a witch, but she got out of it by paying a fine. But I'm really stoked because now I know where this me came from.
You think that witch is you're the descendant of that witch in particular?
Yeah, I'm like, there's got to be
She's what made you.
somebody. Yeah, like somebody in this line has to be as crazy as me and high spirited.
My favorite part of the story is that the lady was accused of being a witch and they were like, "Hi, we're going to stone you to death or you can just pay a fine."
Yeah. Well, she got accused because I guess she lived like close to the border of Salem. Like it was Salem, but then it got divided and they
Uh-huh.
used a compass to determine the property line. And they accused her of making the compass bewitched so it didn't work as well. So she could avoid paying property taxes. Okay, whatever. Like seriously.
That's the best.
I can think of a whole lot more things that I would do as a witch. I mean, I would probably do that too, but like way more cool things. So boring.
I don't know my witch ancestor status. So we probably have the same ancestors if we go back like a few generations. Do you think?
Well, yeah, because you have somebody named something weird and I have somebody named Thankful Sweet.
Yeah, thankful blessing.
Oh, what
That's
if they were in
cool
the same
name.
class at school and their names were just like Thankful? Hey, which Thankful are you? Oh, I'm Thankful number
B.
7.
No, I'm thankful B and I'm thankful S.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
What if you're not even
Um,
actually thankful because you lived at the time where people were like stoning you because you did not mess with a compass?
there's a lot of names like that, like Faith, like maybe not. Hope, maybe not.
Charity? No.
Charity.
I'm a jerk.
I did not learn anything special about anything. I'm just excited that my kids are going to go to school this week every single day, and it's not early out, and I don't have to do parent teacher conferences, and I don't have to hear my child tell his teacher how he's hacked the computer program and he doesn't have to answer any of the questions right. This is my 6-year-old telling the kindergarten teacher, and I'm just sitting there like with a pasted on smile. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And no fires have been lit, so I'm hoping for a good week. We hope you guys will have a good week too. Maybe you'll discover something about your great 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 times 80 grandmother. Maybe not.
Want to know what else I found out?
Mm-hmm.
I looked through, I have to do a paper for my social work program. And so we had to like look into ancestry stuff. And of course, our families are so good at the genealogy thing. Like we have so many books of remembrance upstairs with like weird people's hair in it. It's like my mom's living her dream now that I'm like, I have to find out about this stuff and care about it.
She's like, oh, it's come.
I know. It had to be in her own timing, in her own way. I'm like, listen, here's what I care about. I want to know the witchy ancestors. I want to know that we were not slave owners. Please bless. And also I found out that is true. So relieved. And we had somebody or other who got killed for helping the Underground Railroad. So I feel that was a worthy death, helping people. And I care about seeing who is a widow and seeing how long the females in my line live. And here's the bad news. And I texted my mom this morning. I said, Mom, we are doomed. She's like, what? And I'm like, most people we are related to, even back in the times when people died at 50, ours lived to be 90.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my mom's going to live forever.
That was back before they had like penicillin.
Yeah, you guys, my line, we are cockroaches. We are here forever. So stick with me and I'll help try to find fun things for us all to do for the rest of my life.
This might have to be unofficial, Mel, but I just listened to a podcast about solving crime with genealogy. And so I wrote a song. Are you ready?
Yes, ready.
Genealogy, we are doing it, our genealogy, and the reason why we are doing it is fighting crime, you see.
Yeah, actually that's the whole reason why I did an ancestry like spit test, is to help crime. I hope someone gets caught because of my spit.
I probably have ancestors who were like convicts. And that's okay with me. I mean, they probably like stole a sheep from the lord of the land. Okay, well that went weird. We went to strange places, but that's okay.
Well, guys, this is a short little blah blah introduction, because guess what? The rest of the episode you have to listen to us talk if you continue to listen. But it's gonna be a good one. We had fun recording this, and like some unexpected things came up, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
so.
a good one. Yeah. And so we just kind of had a discussion about where we're at now, what we have been looking back on, and some other fun things, but probably not many more witch ancestor stories.
Yeah, we thought it'd be interesting to just discuss how our grief has changed over the years. And we're still going to tell you to check out the Patreon. And if you want to help support the podcast, do that. And if not, buy us tacos. And if not that, give us a rating and review. And if not that, just be our friend.
Yeah, let's just be chill and love each other, unless you are our killer, and then my DNA will catch you somehow if we are related. Please enjoy this shout out by Anita's number 3.
Yes, it was so funny. I asked number 4 to do it, and he was like, I can't. I'm eating McDonald's hamburger. And I'm like, where did you get a McDonald's hamburger? And he's like, oh, I got it on Saturday, but I put it in the fridge.
Oh my gosh. Wait, but where did he get it Saturday? Did you know?
His uncle bought it for him.
Okay.
They went fishing, but it was so funny. He's like, I'm busy right now. I can't do it, Mom. And I was like, okay, you next. You come do it. So enjoy.
Nice. I love it when your kids do the shout out. They're so great. So enjoy, and we'll see you in the episode. I'm not Anita.
I'm not Mel, and we're both maybe or maybe not witches, and we're just trying to figure out widow.
We
do
now.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Hi! Today it is What Do We Do Now Day! Hooray! Yeah, yeah, yeah!
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Great.
Constance Stallback!
Kelly.
David Kelly. Don Satterwhite. Emily Wesenberg. Evelyn Forrest. Gail Bale. Heather Mullins. Ivan Misner. Krista Waite, Maya Glasser, Neil Hooper, Rebecca Ziba, Samantha Nazan, Karen Cornejo, Amber Allen is Vela, Amy Harton Mattel, Amy Neal, Ashley Hahn, Barbara Schneeberger, Berkeley. Welcome to What Do We Do Now? Brandy Younger, Brittany Pedro, Chris Stefford, what? Chris Steffen, Cindy Wilskers, I can't say it, Wilkerson.
There you go.
Aunt Connie Remage, Danielle Catterberg, Not a Debbie Downer, Dennis Brazo, Jean Marie Massey, J2, Jenny Taylor, Jennifer Beal, Jesse Johnson, Carol Schultz, Laura Agidi Penner, Lara Nold, Lisa Hardman Powell, Lou Klossman, Auntie Murray Hoffman, M.K. Anderson. Hey, that's the last name of my teacher.
Oh.
Meg Murto, Patricia Weist, Rachel Barbosa, Sarah Morris, Simo Fu, Shunsan Haven. He must be bright. She, I meant. Alicia McAllister, Amy Burke, Ann Drennan, Anna Tracy, Audrey Haneker, Suri Nabor.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Christina Pato, Dean Anderson, Cindy Raynaud, Dawn Barber, Debbie Fell, Deborah Westwood, Diana Becker, Doris Rachel, Alice Stevens Den, Emily Toledo, Eric Vandermeulen, Aaron Posick, Gay Lozano, G. Benoit, Dina Haas, Ina Sini, Ileana Bell, Jackie.
Your real aunt.
My aunt! John Calaruso, Seeley, Jane! Hi, Grandma! Secret patron.
Jennifer
Don't tell anyone about this. Jennifer
Davis.
Jenny Armstrong. Jennifer Sanders. Jenny Barrow. Hey, I know you. Jenny Dippold. Jocelyn Mile. Johnny Walker. Judy Malkin. Julie Stevenson. Karen Ochoa. Karina Jacobo. Kathy Murray. Katie Getz. Katie Radcliffe. She's rad. Kara Stara. Kevin Ferry. Chris Morgan. Laura Keeley. Linda. Lindsay Kanopka. Marjorie Lewis. Marion Hammond. Mary McDonald had a little lamb. Mary McGowan.
Melissa Bowers.
Melissa Bowers. Melissa Hancock. Naomi Brown. Rachel Tang. Rebecca Olemaker. Robin Flam. Stacy Sayward. Tammy Terrorist. Sarah Wallace. Trenton Thompson. Val Packer. And drumroll, please. Fly on the wall, Wendy. Can she fly?
No.
Aw. Thank you for supporting What Do We Do Now? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
And I love anime.
This episode is sponsored by the Misner Family Foundation in memory of Elisabeth Misner.
Mel,
What?
we wanted to do a little bit of a different thing today. And you passed your 5-year mark in November.
Mm-hmm.
And I passed my 4-year mark in January. And we've been doing this podcast now for 3.5 years?
Yeah.
About?
Yeah, ish.
Yeah. So I was thinking the other day about how different my grief is now as opposed to what it was in the beginning of the podcast and even right after Jason died and how it's morphed. And I wanted to talk to you about that.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
I don't know.
That's the question.
Well, I go to a place called the Sharing Place. I think we've talked a little bit about that. It's a child grief support group, but then the parents meet while the kids are doing their activities. And at our latest meeting, we've had the same group for a while, but last night we got 2 new people and they were both fresh. They were both within the year, and just watching them kind of was good for me in a way.
How?
Because I could see how different I am now as opposed to then. And I was like, ooh, I remember that. That was awful. And when I'm kind of getting down on myself now, it's kind of nice to see how things have changed a little bit and give yourself a little bit of a high five for how far you've come at the same time, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what it was like at the very beginning for both of us.
Okay.
I mean, I was super shocked, super jelly brains, but also filled with adrenaline
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like on a mission. Like, I must keep Scott's legacy going. And I kind of was living for Scott and trying to pick up where he left off.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, runs out because you don't have energy to sustain that, or I did not. And so then I kind of tanked and got pretty sick. But I just remember everything hurt. I think you have talked about it being like a burn victim before, where everything hurts. And that's how it was for me. And so I didn't want to like put myself in situations where I might be a disaster. Like, I kind of super holed up in my house, and I didn't have a lot of energy for anything either. And that was kind of the whole first year for me. But everything was painful all the time.
So I have a question.
What?
So it's been 5 years now. I feel like for me, I relate to what you said about in the beginning, feeling this great pressure to keep Jason's legacy alive, to make sure everybody remembered him, to keep him on people's minds, to remind them that he existed and who he was and how special he was. And I feel like over time, my grief has gone from being very outward to being more inward, like to being more private about it, and to realize that like no matter how hard we try, we can't really, this is going to sound bad, but we can't really keep. Can you hear my kids?
Yes. I hope that they get louder. She muted me. Here's the caption. Anita is yelling at her kids.
But I feel like my grief is more private and it's turned inward because no matter how hard you try, you can't really keep them on the forefront of other people's minds. So at some point in time, it kind of switched for me where I was like, his memory is more sacred to me, and I don't really want to share him with you in a way.
Yeah, makes sense.
Does that sound like you too, or has it been different for you?
I think I've just felt like I've been put in a blender, and I did feel like Scott and I had like a purpose in his death. And also knowing his personality, I know that he doesn't like to be like the forefront of things. And so not only did I run out of energy doing things in Scott's memory all the time, but I knew that he would be like, okay, yeah, but I don't want all the attention either. And so I think for me, it's been more of how can I live on for myself. So I have definitely noticed that shift where it was like a point in time came where I'm like, Mel, you have to also live for you. And it was less tied to Scott. I don't really quite know how to articulate it other than that. And it's also weird to just not have anything that reminds me of Scott around me. I mean, like I have pictures and stuff, but like we didn't have kids together. The dog that we did have together died after he died. And so, yeah, it's been kind of a starting over thing. And he is not on my mind as much, which I know maybe if somebody is in their first parts of grief, they're probably like horrified to hear that. But I'm also glad because the more that I was thinking about him and like how it wasn't fair or whatever, it was harder for me. And I had more feelings about it. And so I'm kind of grateful for that layer of protection of like forgetfulness. Not forgetfulness, that sounds bad, like I forgot him. I didn't. But also sometimes I'm mad about it still because I'm like, I had quite the journey up until I met Scott with disasters, with relationships and hard things like divorce and other really, really horrible relationships that were worse than the divorce situation. And so sometimes I don't even like to see a picture of us together if I'm in a certain mood because I'm like, you left me. Not that he did it on purpose. He didn't. But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts.
You feel abandoned by him.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, somebody sent me something the other day and it was just a little like funny, haha, but sort of true meme sort of a thing. And it was about hyper independent women. It's like, why am I a hyper independent woman? And it lists all these things. And I'm like, yep, been through all of those. And basically it's because there's like a series of quote abandonment things that happen in your life and you cannot rely on others. So I don't know, man. I think a theme for my life is when I finally trust somebody, it gets taken away, either in betrayal or in death. And like, so I'm kind of dealing with those feelings still. And when Scott died, I felt like that too. I'm just like, well, here I go again. So that part has not changed, but like the emotional part has changed where I don't cry all the time. Now it just like hits me sometimes in random ways.
So I feel like in the beginning, it's all I thought about all the time. Like any moment of the day, where there was quiet or where my mind wasn't actively occupied, it went straight there. And that's a place where I feel like I can see some difference, like objectively almost. Like for my job, that's one of the, like, you have to make objective goals, right? And so it's nice sometimes to feel like you can actually measure it somehow. And although there isn't like a scale, over time, I've noticed that when there's quiet time or when there's times where I'm not actively occupied, I don't think about that. And it's like you said, maybe people might be confused or like feel bad about that, because in a way it feels like if you do that, then you're letting go of that person. But it also is so nice to have that respite, to not feel like you're being tortured all the time by that.
Like when you get up to pee in the middle of the night and it's always on your mind.
Or in the shower, or like while you're cutting onions or whatever. But I don't think about it all the time. I don't think about my widowhood status. I don't think about Jason dying. I don't think about the events of his death. But it still comes up a lot. Like my 9-year-old came home crying from school. And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, Dad, you know. So it's not like it's gone either. But it doesn't occupy every nook and cranny in my brain like it used to. And it feels nice to not think about it all the time. I don't feel like I'm abandoning him by not thinking about it all the time. I don't feel like it's a slight to him.
Yeah. Good. I think that's a healthy place to be in too. Question, because you have not moved out of your house that you guys had, and I had to. Do you think if you had to move and you wouldn't be surrounded by all his things, that it would be different in any way?
This is such an interesting thing because people go different directions with this. You know, some people are like, I couldn't be reminded of all of those things. And some people are like, I find great solace in all of those reminders. And for me, I think it's two parts. One, this is where my support system is. And so it has more to do with that than like, this is the bedroom where we slept. Or,
don't say that.
I wasn't going to say that. Or, you know, this is the kitchen that I made meals in. I have done some remodeling of different areas of the house. And sometimes I do feel sad that like it's different than it was when he was there, because it feels like kind of discarding a piece of them. But for me, I don't think about it that often, and I don't like want to leave or have any kind of feelings tied to, well, I don't know. That's not true, because I do feel some solace knowing like we did this home project together and like we did this together, and this is like the place that we created a home. So
yeah. And I'm back in my mom's basement, so that's really great.
You didn't have a chance though to really create a home yet though, you know?
No,
like,
yeah.
You needed a little bit more time to really like work on that. So.
Yeah, we were like we hadn't even gotten to the point where it's like, hey, Scott, can you organize your kitchen stuff that you wanted from Williams-Sonoma from the wedding? Because, you know, we thought we had more than the time that we had. Yeah, and we were in such the early stage of our marriage where it's like, where you just start figuring out, oh, it's hard to merge lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would have turned out okay, but it was hard, like at some point.
One of the things I feel like people want to know right when they go through this is like, when am I going to feel better? When is this going to stop being so painful? And I'm curious to hear your answer about that, because for me, it was so gradual that I didn't notice it happening until I looked back. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is better, but you can't appreciate it in the moment. Like still, I'm like, this sucks so bad. But then looking at the newbies, I was like, oh no, I'm doing a lot better than that. Do you feel the same way?
I was going to say a washed pot never boils. And I hate that term or that adage or whatever, but it's so true. Yeah, it's so gradual. It's for me too, that I don't know. I think for a long time, and maybe other people are like this, you wake up and you just hope, first of all, that it was a big joke and it's not real, or that you wake up and you instantly feel better. And that will never, ever, ever happen. Ever. unless, I don't know, aliens come from the sky and do something to your brain or something. I don't know. Yeah, same thing for me. It's so gradual that you don't realize how far you've come until you look back. So I don't know what the answer is, because a lot of it depends on circumstance. A lot of it depends on your own self. It depends on your surroundings and your people around you and the circumstances surrounding the death. Okay, and here's the other thing. We've talked about this before. People say the second year is harder than the first. For me, that's not true, but for you, it is true. So I don't know. That's what, again, why it's like, I don't know. There's not a universal answer for everybody. And again, it's not like you hit year 1 and you're like, okay, I'm fine now. Or you hit year 1 and you're like, oh, now it's all of a sudden harder. Nothing is as sudden as like if you had a shocking death, or, you know, even if you had somebody that died from an illness, like they're there and then the next minute they're not. Nothing is going to be as sudden as like the person being here and then being gone. So that's what's annoying about it. Sorry, guys, you're going to learn patience, I guess.
Yeah, it's not like a light switch. It's like a dimmer switch, right? It's not like on, off. Grief is on, off.
It's like
in that improvement.
Dimmer up, dimmer down, and then the lights are flashing because there's a poltergeist, and then the house shakes. It's like that, and then it's medium for a minute.
Yeah.
And then there's an earthquake. And then there's strobe lights. Disco ball.
I wonder if like part of the reason the second year wasn't harder for you than the first year was also because you were like married for 2 years. Does that make sense?
I think it was that, and I had such upset in my environment that my whole first year was so traumatic. Because I had to move within 6 months, and then I was like, didn't have a home to be in permanently for a while. And so finally by like the next year, I was like, oh, at least I have stability. Yeah. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. And yeah, I think, I don't know. Do you find, I haven't paid attention to this, are the people that say that the second year is harder, do they have kids or no kids? Do you think that's a factor?
I think it's both. I think it happens to both kidless and kidded.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. We should take a poll.
Let's do.
And just see. Okay, we're gonna do it. It'll be awesome. I don't know if it has anything to do with that, but I can see that like you're like anything is better than what I just went through. So there you go.
Yeah, and really like that first part set off a series of events for several more years for me. Like it wasn't until after the pandemic that I was like, okay,
more stable.
Stuff has been a little bit more stable.
So the first year, people talk about the first year and why it's so hard is because it's full of all the firsts, right? And yeah, those are all hard. And then there's the seconds, and then there's the thirds, and then there's the fourths. And then there's the firsts that happen, even though it's been 3.5 years or whatever, right? Because it just hadn't happened before. Do you feel like you have, because you've gone through 4 Christmases or 5 Christmases, do you feel like those are less difficult to get through? Because like, I feel like they're getting easier because now I have those holidays or those events. I have some memories of those without Jason. So it's not a constant comparison to what it was before. Does that make sense what I'm asking? Do you feel like you have that too? Like you have more experiences to add to the like normal, this is normal pile. And so it's not always a constant, like this is how it should be.
Yes, because also Scott and I had not figured out what our traditions were going to be. We had one Thanksgiving and one Christmas.
Right.
Freaking jerk. I say that for those listening who have not listened before and you're like, who are these people being like, my husband sucks? We're joking.
Yes.
Just so you know.
I mean, we are mad, but
like
we love them.
Really, those first 2 holidays were so stressful for me because I didn't know how to navigate the whose parents' families are we going to and this and that, and it was kind of stressful. So yeah, and ever since then, like, well, the first Christmas right after he died sucked hardcore and I was not prepared. And then I took like
that was like right after too.
Yeah, because he died in November. But ever since then, I'm like, I know it's a holiday. I know I might not be okay. And I kind of was like that before I married Scott too, because as a a person living in Utah that was single or divorced for a long time. I hated it. Sucked. Was not really seen as a full human. And so I just couldn't wait to get back to normal schedule where everyone was like done being with families and everybody was normal. So I've kind of just gone back to that way. And I've had more I guess I don't feel guilty anymore for doing what works best for me. And I would say before Scott's death, I would, because there's pressure. So Scott dying has given me something that others can see, that they're like, oh, I see why she doesn't want to go, and that's okay. But yeah, I have more normalcy. I'm in charge of it 100%. I don't have to go anywhere I don't want to go.
That's an interesting juxtaposition also, because I'm comparing it to 20 Christmases, right? So that like that's what normal Christmas was to us, was with Jason. And it's taken 3 or 4 Christmases to like build some memories without him. And you were just starting to build those memories. So you have more Christmases without Scott. And then he was there like a blip on the radar. And then you get to mourn the not opportunity to build those together. So I bet it's a little bit different, like holidays and things like that.
Yeah, I think again my brain's done a protective layer thing, because when I really think about it, like Scott was the freaking best, and he was awesome, and he was so kind, and so it's hard for me to go there. So I don't even really think about what it should be like.
In addition to holidays, I feel like a long time ago, I lost the ability to compare trajectories. Like, this is where we would be had Jason not died, and this is where we are now. And I feel like my life has gone so far off of the path that we had mapped out for ourselves that it's kind of wild. Like, I can't even imagine what my life would be like with him here now.
Yeah. And you're different now.
Yeah, so different. And I mean, just the two of us, we have experienced so many things that were only possible because they're gone. And they talk about grief and how it's not really time that heals, but it's experiences, adding experiences to your life that kind of, like we were saying, pad the pokey parts of grief in your brain. And I definitely feel that. Like, I feel like there's been so much that has happened in the last 4 years that my life is fuller than it used to be. It's a lot fuller than it was 4 years ago. And that does take some of the sting off of the feelings of grief, but it's always tinged with sadness that I didn't get to experience those things with him. And a little bit more sadness because for some of those things, I only got to experience them because he died. So it's like he sacrificed himself for my fun experiences or whatever.
I don't have as many trauma dreams as I did before. Thank goodness. What about you?
I'd never had trauma dreams. I would say my dreams about him have stayed consistent. So I don't dream about him very often. Always in my dreams, I know he is dead and like he's come back to life. And in a lot of my dreams, I'm like, I know you're going to have to go back to being dead. So, but he has talked to me in my dreams, which in the beginning, like he was always mad at me, and he wouldn't talk to me. And so I do feel like that has changed a little bit, but I wouldn't say like the frequency has changed much for me. So,
yeah. What about looking for signs of him in daily life at the beginning versus now?
I didn't really spend a lot of time looking for signs for him in the beginning either. I don't know. I don't have like some people have like dimes or butterflies or things that they use to represent and to say like they're talking to me. And I don't have any of those things. Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what?
But I've also kind of been like this for a lot of my life, like kind of open to listening in air quotes for things like that, even before Scott died. And so I noticed that I probably was so broken for a couple of years that I was better at listening. in the silence for like intuition sorts of things, or things that were something that might remind me of Scott, or my attention might be turned to something where I was like, oh, yeah, that would be a Scott thing. I had a ton of those for a long time, and I still actually have those, both from my dad and Scott. And I know that people have different beliefs on these sorts of things, but for me, I've had so many experiences that are like just too weird to be like, oh, nice coincidence. So, but I see stuff all the time, or like it's not as much and not as present, but when it does happen, I'm like, oh yeah, I know where that came from, or I know kind of what frequency of energy that's tied to, or who that would remind me of, or something. And sometimes they're still super weird, and I'm like, that's too weird for that not to be a thing. So yeah, I still have it happen, but I've my life has shifted from, like we talked about before, kind of living for Scott and keeping his legacy alive, to me being here right now, being alive right now, helping myself right now, trying to help others right now, being helped by others right now. And so that part has shifted, but I still notice signs.
I do feel like I feel Jason. Like in the very beginning, it's very strong. I agree with you. But there are things that still happen that make me still feel connected to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That happened just today. Actually, we had a little moment of that. So do you feel like you've kind of already expressed a little bit of this, but I find myself pulling away from some of the things that were very familiar to us, and to situations and groups and activities where it wasn't us, where I didn't have my own identity within that activity or that group. And I find it happening more and more with the people who have not really actively let me know that they still think about Jason. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been I haven't had the experience where I've had to like cut people off and be like, I'm not going to see you anymore or anything like that. I just find myself kind of drifting away from what we did as a couple. And now it's more like, do I have an identity in that? And do I want to stay doing that? Or was I just doing it because that was part of Jason or the us identity?
Yeah. Actually, my mom and I talked about this morning, because the month after my dad died, she and my dad had a couple friends that they would go on trips with, and they still had something planned, and she went anyway. And you know, my mom probably is not as vocal as I am about, I felt crappy, but I was like, how did it go, Mom? Like, would you want to do it again? And she goes, that first time I went, I just was so sad because it was couple, and then me. Like, I understand so much this. And I go, now that it's been a year and they're going on the same trip, do you think that you would feel the same way? She's like, I think so. So
did they invite her?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
yeah, they're really nice. For me and Scott, we didn't have anything that we did with couples. Our time was alone because we were both like working. He was doing theater stuff, I was doing music stuff. So it's like our time together was alone. So
gosh, you were like newlyweds, so you still like liked each other.
I know, it was so you guys, I'm so confused by my life. I'm so glad that his whole circle of friends, like I've talked about this before, they're theater people and they're so amazing and so kind, and they would reach out to me, and they mourned him openly for a long time. I would say 2 years, like online still, like even to the point where I was like, guys, you okay? But I've noticed that like maybe some of them don't talk to me anymore, really. If I saw them, it would be fine. But like, I think they maybe got sick of reaching out. But it was when I was in my like worst time and I couldn't respond. What was the question? What were you talking about? Oh, the couple thing. Yeah.
And if you've pulled away, even if it's not couples, you know, or just like
friends,
you know, friends, or like activities that you did together, or things that were part of your identity. And again, it might be hard because you guys hadn't had a long time to like form what the Mel and Scott identity was.
We didn't even have one. We were working on it. I will say though, his oldest brother, and I have become like best friends since his death. We understand each other a lot, and we both don't have a person and kind of are in unique circumstances, and it's like saved my life so many times. So I do have someone at least that I can talk to about not being coupled. But yeah, I don't have the same thing as you do where you guys like had that whole friend group and you do things.
Have you been disappointed by people's retraction from supporting you? People who like were like, we're never gonna leave you. Because I have.
There's like, it's so dumb. There's one that I can think about, and it's someone I've known for so long, and they're like, we're gonna be there for you. And like, I don't, if it say it was like one of Scott's friends, I'm like, okay, yeah, I would expect it to fall off. But if it's one of my friends and they said that,
Yeah.
and then I didn't hear anything for 2 years, and then they don't ask anything, like, I think I just was at such a sensitive part of my grief that when they said that and didn't follow through, I have like severe feelings about it. But I have to say, that's kind of the only one I have a feeling about. One. And it was my own friend. And they don't even know I'm having a problem with it because it's my problem. What about you?
I for sure feel lucky. I feel like for the most part, my support system has been really consistent, but there are definitely people who swore up, down, left, and right that they would be there and that they're like, we're going to keep checking in on you. And it didn't last very long. And when I do see those people, I'm like, I don't feel as much anger as I used to about it. It's just, I just have that same pulling away feeling, like I'm not going to put myself in situations where we're going to see each other.
Yeah.
And because I don't feel connected to you, and I don't feel like I want to connect with you. So.
You know what? Like the whole forest and trees analogy.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, with the first part of grief, first few years, all I could see was like the piece of bark on a tree. And so I took everything seriously and very literally, like people said they're going to be there. But then as time has gone on and I've allowed or had time to expand on like thinking about others' perspectives or being like, well, of course they can't be there all the time because they have this. Like as we get a lot of people reaching out to us for maybe friends we know that become widowed, I want to reach out to them all the time, but I can't do it. And so I'm like, this is not even possible. And I don't have like a family that I have to take care of, and I'm like, ugh. So I have more empathy for the people that say those things, but I'm also like, I wish that they knew not to say that to somebody in that time period if they're not going to follow through.
Yeah. That's so interesting that you brought up like looking at the bark, because in the beginning of my grief, I felt no empathy towards other situations. I was like, widowhood is the worst. Widowhood when you're young is the worst. Widowhood with kids is the worst. Widowhood suddenly is the worst. Even though like logically I could be like, no, it's not the worst. But that's like really how I felt in like my soul, like this is the worst possible scenario. And when people would compare hard situations to widowhood, I had no room for it. I was just like, no. Like you don't you even come at me comparing divorce to widowhood or anything like that. My feelings towards people suffering in all ways has softened a lot. Like I feel like I can connect with people no matter what their source of suffering is. Like I feel like my empathy has grown in that way to the point where I'm like, yeah, that's got to be so hard, and feeling like I can connect with people over that. Whereas in the beginning, I was so self-centered about my grief that I could not let anybody else have any sort of pain because it didn't compare to mine.
I don't think I couldn't let others have pain because I had gone through the things, but I think I would get annoyed where it's like, oh, you think widowhood is in this other category and it's not. That's kind of where my head was at. But I mean, and I had been through a lot of the suffering stuff even before Scott died. And so I think that part wasn't so, maybe it wasn't as similar as yours is, but I definitely have since gone through really difficult things that involve like animosity feelings. And like, I can't compare it to widowhood. Well, I did not have any animosity feelings towards Scott because I did not discover a betrayal after he died, or we were not going through a betrayal when he died. But then I dealt with those things after, several years after. And man, that is the worst, icky, horrible, awful, black, dark feeling ever, and such deep suffering and so different, but like in a way, like I hate that more because it's like kind of in the hate category versus the sorrow category. So yeah, but it does expand your empathy for sure.
Yeah, and mine has grown to be able to include more people and more experiences and to look at things and be like, no, they're not the same. Like, of course they're not the same. Like, these are worlds away, and that's still a horrible experience for you. And I'm so sorry that you're going through that.
We're growing, Anita. Look at us.
Yeah. And I feel like early grief is very selfish, and not in the bad term, not in the bad way. It just means like you have to be focused on yourself because you are in survival. Yes, you can't really put any of your energy outward because you can't. And so as I've continued on the grief journey, I feel like I have been able to look outward more and not be quite so self-centered in my feelings.
Yeah, that reminds me. So I've mentioned already even today that at first, we're concerned about having our person's legacy live on, and then we have to take care of ourselves. And so that shift I've noticed, and because it does feel good, in quotes, to live for somebody else on adrenaline when you're on adrenaline and you're just like, I have to keep it going, but they catches up with you. And what I realized both in this experience with Scott dying and then me having to take care of myself and be quote selfish, which I think is just surviving. I wouldn't even put it as a negative thing. It's not like our brains are truly just trying to survive. Like they're offline. And with going through that, and then the other experience I talked about, like the betrayal situation, I couldn't even start healing until I had empathy for myself first. Because I think for me, I mean, we grew up in a community where it's like, well, forget your pain and just go to work, and forget your pain and just serve others. And it's like, that works for a time, maybe, or maybe it works 100% for a certain type of person. But for me, it caused me to forget about me. It's like, well, who's going to take care of this person? Mel. Well, only Mel. There were times where it's like, that was a form of betrayal to myself if I were not attending to my own survival needs.
Do you feel like you're where you want to be now?
I don't even know where I want to be. Someone asked me that a couple months ago, and I'm like, I don't know, because I got up today and I didn't want to die. So that's a win for me. I
still really, really, really struggle with feeling like I'm not where I should be as far as progress goes. And I've expressed this a lot on the podcast, just feeling like we should, in quotation marks, be doing better than this, that we should be more organized, that I should be coping better with the demands of solo parenthood, that my kids should be in a different place behaviorally or in school, and that I should be able to manage all of that better. So I do still feel like I am in grief, and it's not better. And that makes me upset.
Are you saying because you're grieving what you think should be right now, but is not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and just knowing that it would be like that I wouldn't be in this position if Jason were here. Like, we would have two parents to be doing all of this, and I would have somebody to be helping me with all of the struggles of life, the mowing of the lawn, the fixing the stupid leaking toilet, the all of the remembering to get the oil changed, knowing what to do because my stupid brakes are squeaking, all of the things that have to do with life. And then just feeling like I should be managing this better, and I'm still not crushing it, and I want to be crushing it. And I have to take a step back often and try and see how far I've come. But it's hard. Like, that's a hard thing. I beat myself up a lot about that.
I'm sorry for you.
So that's why I ask, like, do you do that same thing? Do you feel like you are making the progress that you desire?
I have not put a goal on myself. Mostly because I've been kind of scary in the head for a long time. And I've had to really be on top of that. And so I would say my expectations for what should be, in quotes, is maybe it looks different than maybe what yours would for you. But also, I remember, again, like my previous trauma before Scott even died caused me to look at these things and to really identify. People are putting me in this category like I should be married, I should have kids, I am this age, I live in this place, it should be look like this. And I really struggled a lot with that for a lot of years because I'm like, a lot of those things are out of people's control, and like stop it with the pressure. So I kind of addressed those earlier, but then Scott dying broke me open so much that I'm just like, well, now I don't care what you think. Before I was like, I care what you think, but I'm still like, and I feel ashamed that somehow I'm not living up to your standards, but life is what it is. Like, I can't control this or that, you know. Now my goals for myself are more like, how am I doing right now? And if I start feeling feelings like, oh, Mel, you're so lazy, or you're not doing enough, I have to remind myself. I actually write down not every day, but like on these days where I'm like, I can tell my head is not in a good place, I write down 10 things of thoughts that I can put in my head when I'm feeling crappy. And one of them is always, I am healing. And for some reason, when I think I am healing, that helps me to get more in the moment. But I kind of can't think past the present moment, honestly. I think my brain's so broken, and I think having to deal with some of the emotional issues, and also like, I've had a lot of family trauma since my dad has died too, a lot. And so I think I'm doing good because I have been exercising. I didn't exercise for a couple of years after Scott died. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm in the moment, I would say. But I can see how I should maybe look for some goals. But the other thing too, it's like, if your goal is dependent on somebody else, beware. Because all you can control is yourself.
All of my quote unquote goals are all very nebulous too. Like, what does it mean to be doing better? I don't know. You know, does it mean that you're not struggling? I don't know, but I do, like, and I look at other widows and I think like, gosh, like they seem to have it put together better. And I have to remind myself like of my specific circumstances and my specific kids and the difficulties they have. And so I'm with you. It's a trap.
You're also doing a podcast today.
They've been on it.
Yeah, but like producing a podcast and making it and traveling and speaking, I bet a lot of them don't do that.
It's a lot.
So
no, that's true. Oh, I thought you meant my children.
No, the people you're comparing yourself to.
I was so confused. I was like, of course they don't have a podcast, Mel. They're children. Anyway, okay.
Okay, Anita, I have one for you. Here's my experience, and I want to know what yours is. I noticed that I only wanted to talk to or be friends with widows or people that really could understand the close death. And I didn't want anybody that was outside of that circle to like be in my life at all until the last year and a half or so. And then I noticed, again, it was a slow process, but I've noticed like the reintegration of myself with normal muggles, or muggles that are not necessarily muggles, that they've had death, but they function more normally. And I didn't even realize this until we went to Camp Widow and we were around all widows again. Because for a couple of years, I was like only around widows and then widows at Camp Widow. So I'm like, yeah, this is my people. And now, since I've been skating and doing other stuff, I've been talking to and being around more people. And so it was interesting to go to Camp Widow and it's like, oh, everyone's a widow. Oh, yeah. Okay. I guess my circles are changing a little bit. What about you?
So I didn't really go through the just want to talk to widows thing. But and I still feel this pretty heavily. I have a really hard time with new people in my life because I do feel like it's easier with widows. This aspect, they don't know me, right? They don't know the real me. They don't know who I really am. and they don't know Jason. And so they can't have a full understanding of me and why I am the way I am because they don't know what I lost. So I still struggle when I meet new people or I'm put in proximity with people who have come into my life after Jason died, because I just want to be like, you know, in the first 5 seconds, like, just so you know, like, my husband died. You need to know that about me. I blurt that out way less than I used to. It used to be like the most important thing people knew, but I still feel like that. Like, I'm like, at what point in time did they get to know that this version of me is because of this? And they will never understand who I was before and why I am the way I am today. And that's still a struggle for me. I really have a hard time with that still.
Yeah. I used to feel like that, and I don't so much anymore.
I mean, if I'm not going to have much of an interaction with them, it doesn't matter anymore. But like new coworkers and new people like that, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I have one final question for you, Mel.
What?
If Scott were able to tell you what he thinks of you now, what do you think he would say?
Oh, I already know. He thinks I'm crushing it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
What did you think?
Crushing it. I don't know. I don't know, but something.
Yeah. I mean, even if that's me watching true crime on TV playing Zelda for 9 hours a day, I'll be like, you're crushing it.
Do you ever think you disappoint him?
No.
I do.
You think I'm disappointing Scott?
No. I sometimes feel like in this moment I've let Jason down. Like, I don't think that he would say that overall or globally. Like, I think he would be really proud of the work that I've done and how I've done it. But I can see him like shaking his head sometimes, like, oh, Anita, like, come on.
Scott shakes his head at all times. I think that part. But I don't know. I know that Scott would always shake his head and roll his eyes at my antics. And but at the same time, like, that's why he loved me.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think that the parts where it's like you are taking your pain and trying to help others, he would super support that. He had been through a lot of pain and was a super empathetic person. And so I know that part he would be proud of. And as far as all the other things where it's like, I wonder what Scott would think. Like, my hair is no longer blonde. I have a nose ring. I have tattoos. I have, I go skateboarding. I'm a teenager now. What would he think? And it's like, kind of don't care, because you know what? You died, and you got to do what you got to do. But I think that, with perspective that Scott may have as a dead person, he's like, good job. Even if I smell bad and forget to brush my teeth and wear deodorant, like, he's probably like, okay.
I guess that's the thing about in our case, our husbands, is that they loved us through the good and the bad, the stinky breath and the stinky feet and the
farts,
beautiful, whatever also. So they probably would feel the same way about the jobs we're doing now. So thanks for chatting with me about this, Mel. I think it's an interesting study to see how grief changes and to take a little snapshot now as opposed to what it was in the beginning and even at the beginning of the podcast, because I do think that both of us have changed quite a lot.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed Mel and Anita conversation today. We are our own guests.
Come join us in the Widow Wives Club. We'd love to hear how your grief has shifted in the time period that you've been grieving. So come share that in the Widow Wives Club. It's our private Facebook group. Just make sure you answer all the questions and don't get mad at us. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
You can also buy us tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww. And you can get on our app, which is free, and you can have access to all this stuff. So even if you have widow brain, which you do, or if you know someone that has widow brain, which you do, you can just go to the app and find all the things.
Excellent. And if you're not able to support us in any other way, just give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. Until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two young widows. We're changing and growing and evolving, and we're trying to figure out widow
we
do
now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys. Such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.